Islam. All members must properly attend their meetings and become a part and a portion of all the uplifting acts of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Members must pay their dues and keep in line with all necessities of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Then you're entitled to the name of faithful. Husband, you must support your wife and children. Wife, you must obey your husband, take care of your children, and look after the duties of your household. Sons and daughters must obey father and mother and be industrious and become a part of the uplifting of fallen humanity. All Moorish Americans must keep their hearts and minds pure with love and their bodies clean with water. This divine covenant is from your holy prophet, Noble Jew Ali, through the guidance of his father, God Allah. At this time, I'd like to recite the Moorish American prayer, the source from which Moorish Americans draw their strength. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Jew Ali. Amen. First off, I'd like to rise giving praise to Allah. I'd like to give praise to Allah because he is the one who found the Moorish Science Temple of America in the year of 1913 AD for the express and profound purpose of uplifting fallen humanity, teaching us those things necessary to make us better citizens. I'd like to give honor to all of those and honor to all of you that have and will aid and assist us in this, our divine and gigantic mission, the uplifting of fallen humanity. And last but not least, I'd like to give honor to effort, because so many of us don't even try. At this time, I'd like to read from the Moorish Holy Quran, the book of the seven seals. The nun was able to open and read from its sacred pages the messages of purity and love. A lot of times we call this Moorish Quran the Last Supper. We call it the Last Supper because we eat from it. It's food for thought. When you begin to talk about Jesus and the Last Supper, what did he feed his people? He fed the people food for thought. And when you begin to dig down deep into these teachings of the Holy Prophet, Noble Jew Ali, you'll get filled up. You'll get filled up with the holy breath. You begin to eat. Sometimes it tastes bitter and sometimes it's sweet, but all times are not alike. And at this time, I'd like to read from the book of the seven seals, the Moorish Holy Quran. The chapter I'd like to read from is chapter 48. And this is the last chapter in the Moorish Holy Quran. And the title of this chapter is The Last Prophet in These Days is Noble Jew Ali, who was prepared divinely in due time by Allah to redeem men from their sinful ways and to warn them of the great wrath which is sure to come upon the earth. John the Baptist was the forerunner of Jesus in those days to warn and stir up the nations and prepare them to receive the divine creed which was to be taught by Jesus. In these modern days, there came a forerunner who was divinely prepared by the great God Allah, and his name is Marcus Garvey, who did teach and warn the nations of the earth to prepare to meet the coming prophet, who was sent to this earth by Allah to teach the old-time religion and the everlasting gospel to the sons of men, that every nation shall and must worship under their own vine and fig tree and return to their own and be one with their Father, God Allah. The Moorish Science Temple of America is a lawful and chartered and incorporated organization. In its subordinate temple that desires to receive a charter, the Prophet has them to issue to every state throughout the United States, etc., that the world may hear and know the truth. that among the descendants of Africa, there is still much wisdom to be learned in these days for the redemption of the sons of men under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We, as a clean and pure nation, descendants from the inhabitants of Africa, do not desire to amalgamate or marry into the family of the pale-skinned nations of Europe, neither serve the gods of their religion, because our forefathers are the true and divine founders of the first religious creed for the redemption and salvation of mankind on earth. Therefore, we are returning the church and Christianity back to the European nations as it was prepared by their forefathers for their earthly salvation, while we, the Moorish Americans, are returning to Islam, which was founded by our forefathers for our earthly and divine salvation. Praise Allah and honor to the Prophet, Noble Drew Ali. I have a good subject matter this afternoon, but I want to start out by going back a little ways with my understanding of certain brothers and sisters in the Moorish Science Temple of America. I have a decree here that was sent to November the 21st, 1978. And this is when a lot of brothers was working diligently to get a Moorish Science Temple of America in Lawton Reformatory. And it transpired in 1978. And it brought some memories back to my mind, because I was thinking about the brother that taught me. And when he taught me, he was with the prophet in the prophet's last days. And he was a member of Temple 13 in Baltimore, Maryland. And he used to teach us before he met with Brother H. Scott Earl out of Temple in New York. He used to tell us how he used to visit with a lot of different sheiks that was in Moorish home number 1 and Moorish home number 2. And he used to tell us how the Moorish in Moorish home number 2 used to make all of our clothes. The sister that was in charge of everything was Sister Tiggs Earl, Moorish home elder sister. And she used to make all of the clothes and send them across the country. And brothers still be asking these kind of questions, because when the brother used to teach us from 1928 all the way up until 1956. Now, when you say 1928 to 1956, this brother was a part of the grand body of C. Kirkland Bey. All those many years, he was a part of the body of C. Kirkland Bey, and every year he used to speak at the conventions. Every once of the week, he used to be down Moorish home number 1 with one of the Supreme Grand Advisor and moderators, because this was a brother who he was close to. But because of the decision he made about going inside those institutions to teach brothers and sisters about their nationality and divine creed, he went through a few bumps. But we have to understand that when you begin to talk about 1956, but before 1956, how many years was he a part of the grand body of C. Kirkland Bey? And this is one of the things that I want to talk about again today, because I got this thing a little while back in the mail. It's about what is a Moorish American. And these was things that was given to us back in the day, but this brother H. Benson Hill sent that to me not too long ago. And the reason why I mentioned brother Benson Hill, because a lot of times you still have brothers and sisters today. When I was in Petersburg, we had Benson Hill and Grand Bay was there a couple of times, and Stocks Bay. You know, we used to take a bus. Every other week, we had a bus load taking family down Petersburg. And everybody used to laugh at our bus. Man, them Moors got that old bus, man, that looked crazy. And they got them Moors driving that bus down here. But every other week, if people that couldn't get on it was a packed bus. And Benson Hill was one of the drivers of the bus. Benson Hill was also a brother that was with Jeremy Bay with. See, it was two different kind of Moors that was a part of what the brother was trying to do. There was brothers that was talking about the temple that was formed by Jeremy Bay, and then you had a temple that brothers in the penitentiary, you know, that was formed, and you would teach whenever you go in the joint or when you go up to the White Law and get high, then y'all get to talking about the prophet on Friday night. But this brother, the reason why I want to talk about him, Brother Benson Hill, was because they would never talk about the great work that those brothers and those sisters that was doing during that time. And when those brothers brought that bus up down Lawton, for the brothers and to see their families, it was such a blessing because it gave brothers another insight to see some of the things that the Moors was doing on the outside. Not talking about those that was in Lawton. Those that was on the outside, some of the things that they was doing in the community. Not just talking about the store that they had, not just talking about the club that they had, not just talking about they had brothers that was a part of our temple that, just like the other day I seen on the news, that they just won a spelling bee contest. I just seen it. They had a spelling bee contest, and they had a young little boy, 14 years old, that won. I remember in Washington, D.C., they had a spelling bee contest. And Brother Benson Hill, one of his sons, won that. He won that. And that made the prophet feel so good because the Moorish Americans was doing things that was in the community. Not just our basketball team that we held in the city for 10 years. We was doing things politically, religiously, socially, and economically. We was doing things reaching back and raising up our little brothers and our sisters. So people will always talk about what the brothers in Washington, D.C. was doing. Before they got this temple there up there on 71, we were doing the work of the prophet. Teaching the brothers and sisters to learn to love instead of hate. Telling them to know of their higher self and lower self. Telling them that the higher self is justice, mercy, love, and right, and that the lower self is what the higher self was not. And man, brothers, again, I like to reiterate, when we had that bus coming down there, man, people were so happy. They were so happy that their family had a way to get down there to see their family. That thing was packed up. And them Moors was given a lot of honor because they would ask me, Lynch-Bey, is the bus coming this week? Is you going to put another sign up? And this is when you are reaching back, doing things in the community, teaching those things necessary. A lot of times we got 10 and 12 members that was coming to our holy day before they come down there to see their people on that weekend. And some of them are sheiks right now in the Moorish Temple of America. So I want to talk something about some of the things that was taught to us in the Moorish Temple of America that I wanted to share right here. And this is what is known as 101, 101 questions that the Holy Prophet gave us. We said in 101, we said the high over the low, the rich over the poor, and the wise over the ignorant. This is known as our 101, 101 question. But we have a question 27 that I want to read. And I want to read it because I want to speak on it before I go any further. And verse 21, key 21 says, will you give in brief the line genealogy through which Jesus came? It says some of the great fathers through which Jesus came are Abraham, Boaz by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and Joseph by Mary. Now we're going back to those two pillars. When we begin to talk about Abraham, Boaz by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and Joseph by Mary, because you got Solomon, you got David, you got Hezekiah, you got Ruth, you got Boaz, but it say Boaz by Ruth. So Ruth was the Moabite. And they are talking about the two pillars. And every time you hear people talk about Jesus, they always take you back to Europe. Every time you hear people talking about Boaz and Jesus, all of them, they take you back to Europe. But these are the two pillars. These are the two pillars when you learned about Jesus, when you learned about Boaz, when you learned about Jesus' father and mother. All of this came out of Asia. It say, from the east comes all light. And though the sun is hanging at high noon, the blind cannot see the light. The same as the Islamic creed brought to the Asiatics of North America by Prophet MoorishVoice, he offered to those who were sick at heart, tried for many years, yet they are blind and cannot see the light. Nor the prophet trying to put new wine in old skin, for he knows that it will burst them. Yet he had the remedy for the nations. The same remedy brought by Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, and Confucius, which remedy is the truth. The nation do not want the truth. It is too extern. But until they accept it and find out where it truly is, there will continue to be religious controversy. And there's religious controversy. So now, when you begin to talk about Jesus, because he looked just like me. When you begin to talk about Joaquin, he looked just like me. When you begin to talk about Boaz, he began to talk about me. So when you begin to talk about the foundation, who built this kingdom, who built that kingdom, who built this Mars, who built that Mars, when you begin to talk about this religious order, this religious set, you have to understand we're talking about the east. It say from the east comes all light. And though the sun is hanging at high noon, the blind cannot see the light. The same as the Islamic creed brought to the Asiatics of North America by Prophet MoorishVoice, who offered to those who were sick at heart, tried for many years, yet they are blind and cannot see the light. Nor is he trying to put new wine in old skin. The reason I'm saying this is because when you begin to look at your forefathers, when you begin to see how our great-grandmothers and our great-grandfathers was up in them churches, teaching that everlasting gospel, and the reason why we survive today, because by your spirit is what kept all of us safe, because the Spirit of God is in them. Now, you took my forefathers. You buried my forefathers in Vatican Square. You took on our names, gave us names as Negro, colored, and black. You took on the Spirit. But let me tell you something. When you begin to study the teachings of our holy and divine prophets, if you're not in your higher self, you're not going to get the blessing anyway. The blessing ain't going to come your way, because recitation is no sign of elevation. You can quote all day long. You could quote things all day long, but until it become a part of you, you can't talk about it. Let me share this. The Holy Prophet told us, he said, I brought you everything that it take to save a nation. He said, now take it and save yourself. Now, when he said that, He is telling us that he bought us everything that it takes to save the nation. Now, the only way we could take it and save ourselves is we will have to be in our higher self. See, the higher self is the mother of virtues. We're talking about virtues now. And harmonies of life that breed justice, mercy, love, and right. So now, we're talking about take it and save yourself. Take what and save yourself? Because he told us that he gave us some tools. He said the tools are the workshop of the mind, where things are made of thought and where we build up character. So we talking about tools are the workshop of the mind now. Okay? We're talking about the Last Supper now. And when the Last Supper fill you up, then that means that you in your higher self, you living the work. You doing the work. You know that you can't serve two masters at the same time. You got to love one and despise the other. And in your higher self is where you meet Allah. You don't meet Allah nowhere else. Now me, you me for example. Every day, I want to play the fool by halves. Today I want to be all right over here, but tomorrow I want to go over there. Today I want to say that I love God, but tomorrow I don't want to love him. I don't want to love him because I want to do something else. Because, see, you got a higher self and a lower self. But I'm talking about the mother of virtues. And when you begin to talk about virtue, don't you want a virtuous woman? Because I know a woman wants a virtuous man. Man is virtuous just like a woman is. All this comes from your forefathers. Let me tell you about Mary. And let me tell you about Anna. See? See, we keep failing to forget this. Mary, Jesus' grandmother Anna, they used to teach lessons in our temple. And the sisters are still teaching that lesson today. This is why when the Moors went into Spain, us, in 711, to give Europe civilization, to bring them out of the caves and to clean them up. See, this is why whenever you see a Moorish woman, she always virtuous. Watch her dress. Watch how she looks. She don't wear no dresses all up here looking crazy. You know, with them funny looking eyebrows and that little stuff on their eyes. They don't look like that. They're a virtuous woman. And when you begin to talk about Mary, when you begin to talk about Elizabeth, when you begin to talk about all those sisters, they was virtuous. They was telling sisters to cover up, to clean up, to be in their higher self, to teach things of wisdom, of justice, of mercy, of love, and right. That's how they used to be when we grew up, all of us. That's how the sisters in the church used to be. All that's dead now. Rome worked, and they rolling. They rolled. Their job was to take those of Asiatic descent and turn them around to be somebody else, and it's working. It was working, but you got too many virtuous sisters that's living today. So the key is, the first teacher is the woman. Woman is the first teacher. And the woman is the one who will have to teach the children. You're going to have to tell them how to learn to love instead of hate. You got to tell them what being virtuous is. This is what they was taught in Sisters Auxiliary. These are the things that they was taught to the sisters. There's a child, as I used to say, when we was children, our mothers used to tell us certain things don't do. Certain natures we don't take on. But now we done took on everything. We're doing everything that come out of Europe. Now we European. Because when you begin to talk about, because the whole world was called Asia at one time. The whole world was called Asia at one time. Now it's known as Asiatic and it's known as European. When we went into Spain, it was Asiatic. We come out of Spain, it's European. I ain't saying nothing wrong with that because there was growth and development. But what we need to do now is learn of our forefathers' ancient and divine creed. We came out, now we got to go back. Give back to Caesar what belonged to Caesar. Certain things you just don't do. certain things man don't do. Most men have lost their head now. Most men that I remember I was coming up as a child. We young. And we still talking about those things that you don't do. But I went to a spot called La Merla one time. And I went back home when I left there. And we still talking about those things that you don't do. But everybody got quiet on me now. Everybody's silent. Because they got them. They got them because they're in Europe now. They went on because I'm going to tell you something. We always talk about our woman. And we talking about things that men try to get our woman to do. And when men get our women to do these things, then that means that they got another notch in their belt. See, but now I think about my sister, I think about my cousins, I think about my nieces, I think about my daughters, I think about all my family members, and all these brothers now got our sisters doing everything under the sun. How can you not? You the big boy. You got everything. You're doing everything under the sun. And when you do that, then you got things coming to you. You got all these European entities coming to you. And you can't say you're Moorish American no more, because you say, man, I used to be a Lynch-Bey. You can't be that no more. Because when you take on that Lynch-Bey title, then you're always looking for the best connect anyway. You always try to find something greater. Don't say that you with the prophet. You're not. You with somebody else. You in Europe. You got a sister every day. You got my sister, his sister, doing everything under the sun, but you're doing the same thing too. Because you are the European leader. They get to you, you the man. So what are we going to do? I heard a little brother I said the other day up there in Detroit. He's saying that us young brothers, now he ain't 30 years old yet. He said that we got to come together and get back to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. If we said that we know what you all eat, then we have to be here. You can't serve two masters at the same time. We Muslim. Now you say Islam, ism. We talking about the doctrine. You hear me? We not just talking about Islam. We talking about Islamism. What is our religion? Islamism. Is that a new or is that the old time religion? Old time religion. What color flag is the Moorish? It is a red flag with a 5-pointed green star in the center. What do the 5 points represent? Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Now we say we have a flag. And we say our flag represents love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We say that our flag is over 10,000 years old. How old are you though? How old is your flag? Who are you? Because the brother asked me the other day, who was I? I said, I'm my Lord self. I said, I'm weak as water. I'm doing everything that's diametrically opposed to what Noble Drew Ali say. But now I got to really realize and clean myself up. Because I have a daughter and I have a lot of family. See, what am I going to leave with them? You can't serve two masters at the same time. You tell them one thing, but you do another. You can't tell a child to do one thing and you do the other. What we need to understand is, I said earlier in another text that I met some people and they was telling me about the Irish and they St. Patrick's Day. They had a holiday for St. Patrick's Day and that other day. But after those days are no longer there, then they're white again. You can't call me doing St. Patrick's Day. You can't call me white. You can't do it. Because if you did, it'd be disrespectful to my forefathers. That's just right now. If you call me black, if you call me a black man, it's disrespectful. It's disrespectful to me because then I'm not honoring my forefathers. You tell me that you like history. You tell me that you study history. You say that in your history that you studied where the Moors, there was some people actually called Moors. Before there was any such thing as black, there was a people that called Moors. And he said these people that was called Moors went into Spain. And when they went into Spain in 711, see, you play dice. See? You play dice to 7. You can win with 7, and you can win with 11. We won when we went into Spain, but we came out in 1492. We failed. our last stronghold. And the reason why we fail is because we start serving carnal customs and the mere ideas of man. Things that have never done us any good, but have always harmed us. So as long as we are outside of the constitutional fold, long as we worshiping other gods other than our forefathers, then we're going to have trials and tribulation. We're going to keep going through these trials and tribulations that we're going through. We keep talking about we honoring our father. We keep talking about we honoring our mother. We keep talking about going somewhere about reparation. The first thing you need to do is worship under your own vine and fig tree. You need to study your history. You need to understand that you wasn't black until recently. See, you little young brother. I remember when you didn't call yourself black. I remember when you didn't call yourself colored. I can't really go back when you really didn't call yourself Negro because I was there. But it was just in my mind, I'm a Negro. And Negro is a name given to a river in West Africa by Moors because it contained black water. Now they say a river in West Africa. Where's this river in West Africa? Brazil. My father was born at. And Brazil is a part of Africa. So you got to understand when you begin to talk about the Portuguese, the Dutch, and the French, all this have a lot to do with our history. And all of us, I like to reiterate, that's got college degrees, went to school, got daughters and children and sons and nephews, tell them the truth about themselves. Tell them to investigate who their forefathers were. But until we accept the truth about the advent of slavery, we still gonna be slaves. You're gonna be a slave to sin. We're slaves, but we're slaves to sin. And the reason why we're slaves to sin, because we're worshiping the carnal customs and the mere ideas of man, things that have never done us any good, but have always harmed us. Now, okay. Let's look at this again. The Last Supper. The Last Supper. That was in our meeting last night. Let's look at the Last Supper. They was talking about Jesus and the Last Supper. And they said Jesus was teaching at the Last Supper. And when he was teaching at the Last Supper, he was telling the people about food for thought. When you begin to talk about the Last Supper, you're talking about food for thought. And as he teaching you about the everlasting gospel, which is a saving power that comes from Allah through our ancient fathers by his prophet. So when he's teaching us about this everlasting God, he's telling us to be born again. So now Jesus was talking. And the prophet was telling us, when Jesus was talking, Jesus was saying, you must be born again. So I said, man, what Jesus talking about, man? That dude crazy. I'm around here, man, telling me I'm going to be born again. I'm already born again. Jesus said, you must be born again. And then he said, man, me being born again, what? Must I go back to my mother's womb? If I have to be born again, do I have to go back through my mother's womb? He said, no. To be born again, you have to change your thought pattern. He said, that which is of the flesh is of the flesh, and that which is of the spirit is of the spirit. So now we born of the flesh. And we born of the flesh, we doing fleshly things. We doing everything that's diametrically opposed to what God say because we doing fleshly things. So you got two kind of people in the world. You got divine and you got, you got two people in the world. Which one are you going to serve? You know, you can't serve both masters at the same time. And when I talk, you think it's crazy. You hear Europeans talking this sign, but they got it from me. I told you a long time ago that you can't serve two masters at the same time. You got to love one and despise the other. You got to give back to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Now, who is Caesar? Give back to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Now, I know about Julius Caesar. I remember about the Roman Empire. So when you say give back to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, who is he talking to? He's talking to the Asiatics right now. So when he say give back to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, what is he telling you to give back? He's telling you to give back that thought pattern. See, there's a thought pattern. When you begin to talk about giving back to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, we're talking about the thought pattern, the way he thinks, his concepts, his ideologies, the things that he do, the things that he won't stop doing, the things that come out of Europe. Matter of fact, I even seen two mates looking just alike. Both of them of the same species, and they was in love with each other. I'm not saying that's European, though. That's not Asiatic. If that's what you do over there in Europe, I can't go over there. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying those of Asiatic descent. Those of Asiatic descent who say that you love Jesus and you will follow Jesus to a destiny which is not uncertain, no unknown, then you got to start being intelligent. We're talking about intellect now. We're talking about giving back to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. And we're talking about the thought pattern. See, there's a thought pattern. I used to be of that thought pattern. I was doing everything that was diametrically opposed and didn't want to change. I didn't want to change because I didn't want to do right. See, you could do right or you could do wrong. The higher self, though, is justice, mercy, love, and right. The lower self is what the higher self is not. So right now, Drew Ali said, if I can get you to think, you'll save yourself. But you can't think. If he can get you to think, you can't think, though. I can't think. Somebody else is thinking for me. Somebody else is thinking for you. Drew Ali said, if he can get you to think, you'll save yourself. And save yourself what? From the cares of the world. Save yourself from hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms. The lower self is what the higher self is not. The lower self breeds hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms. And this is how you come back in tune with your Father, God Allah. There's lessons that's taught in the Moorish Temple of America from a lot of Moorish perspectives. But those brothers that we were talking about earlier, those brothers that scholars that's been around a while, see, a lot of you don't even know anything about divine creed right now. But you'll need it. You'll need this circle 7 in your life because it's going to help us when we deal with the government for the quarters that be. So the higher self is the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life and breathes justice, mercy, love, and right. Why did Allah send Jesus to this earth? It say to save the Israelites from the iron hand oppression of the pale-skinned nations of Europe who was governing a portion of Palestine at that time. Why did Allah send noble Drew Ali to this earth? To redeem us from our sinful ways, to tell us about our nationality and divine creed. Let us know that we are not Negro, colored, and black. Let us know that these names were given to slaves by slaveholders. Listen, noble Drew Ali said these names was given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. So now that we know this, we know there ain't no such thing as no national side or divine side. When noble Drew Ali came, I'm saying what he bought. Now whatever you got there, and there's about 5 or 6 noble Drew Ali. They got noble Drew Ali 1, they got noble Drew Ali 2, they got noble Drew Ali 3, 4, and by the end of next year, there's going to be another noble Drew Ali. There's a lot of noble Drew Ali. But the first one I knew, he told me that he with the national side, and the other one said he with the divine side. And I had to sit him down and say, you done bump your head. Ain't no such thing as no national divine. And I just read to you. our divine and national movement stand for the Pacific grand principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. You know what? It ain't even no room for discussion. You just got to learn the prophet and get in line. Certain things that he done wrote down is right there. Ain't no need for no discussion. You know, Drew Ali brought us a divine and national. So he want us to be spiritual too. You don't want to be spiritual. You don't want to get no spirit in you, not knowing that it come from you anyway, because they took everything from you. They took your nationality from you. They took your Jesus from you. They took my Jesus. They buried Jesus in Vatican Square. And when they buried Jesus in Vatican Square, they took on his name. They took on his name. Now he Negro, colored, and black. That's who Jesus is. Jesus was living. Jesus was Negro. Jesus was colored. Jesus was black. Because Jesus is who you are. You who Jesus was. When you say Negro, colored, and black, that's who your forefathers has been given the title of Negro, colored, and black. Because these names was given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now. And all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained noble Drew Ali the prophet to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. Man, when noble Drew Ali first come to this earth, when he started raising up the brothers and sisters, and when the snitches started running back, telling the people the information that they had received from noble Drew Ali, man, everybody was in tangent because they had a secret that nobody else had and thought everybody was dead and gone. They didn't know, but Allah, in his infinite wisdom, sent Drew Ali. Sent Drew Ali with the methodology that was redeem us from our simple ways, telling us who we are, who our forefathers were. And then he started getting paid. Okay, I'm going to pay you this to do this. I'm going to pay you this to infiltrate this. And man, we growing. You don't know how blessed we are. Even those that was around that wasn't really serious about it, you was there and you played a great part. Because the prophet said, many are called, a few are chosen, ain't but a few. He said, many think that they're on the same road with the true one, but they're not. And then you have a lot of brothers that's on the same road, but they're elevating. You got to grow. The way certain brothers was yesterday, they're not the same way today. Tomorrow they're going to be greater. But many trials, man, and man gonna go through until all his lessons are learned. You gonna go through some trials and tribulations. You know, look at yourself. Look at the things that you, even ball players. You know, you see some of them that elevate their game. They're getting a little better. They talk to other ball players to make it better. And some brothers and sisters sit down and talk to other ministers, talk to other sheiks, talk to other masters to help them elevate their game, because the only strength that Satan have is the strength that we give him. We have to overcome these things of the world. We have to become physical, firm, and fortified. The only strength that Satan have to give anybody is the strength that you give him. The Lord self is strong. That's what Jesus said. He said, but by many times I am bound down to carnal life. He said, have I the strength to overcome and give my life a will and sacrifice for men? When I should stand before the face of man and they demand a proof of my messiahship, what would I say? And then the tempter came and said, if you be the Son of Allah, command these stones to turn to bread. And Jesus said, who is it that demands a test? It is no sign that one is Son of Allah because he does a miracle. The devil can do mighty things. Did not the Gentile magician do great things before the Pharaoh? He said, my words and deeds in all the walks of life shall be the proof of my messiahship. So now let's talk about this high self. Let's talk about the tools of the workshop of the mind. Okay? It said we got tools of the workshop of the mind. let's go back over this again. He said you are given many tools, and all Moorish Americans are given many tools. They're right in your 101 questions. We have many tools, and these tools are given us. You know, the tools that we have: the hammer, the plane, the chisel, the saw. There are many different tools that we are having. We all are given these tools of the workshop of the mind. And we're supposed to take these tools, because man is the temple of God. We're supposed to take these tools and work on ourselves with these tools. So they say they gave us many tools. They gave me a hammer, and they gave me a chisel. But what I had to come to find out is we all have all these tools. But what we have to look at is that each one of them have a different job. These tools are the workshop of the mind, where things are made of thought and where we build up our character. Each one of these tools have a different job. When it's time to use the hammer, you can't use the plane. When it's time to use the plane, you can't use the saw. You got to use the proper tool at the proper time. And as you use the proper tool at the proper time, this is when you get a chance to see growth, and this is where you get a chance to see development. I'm over here trying to use a plane when I should be using the saw. And I'm over here when I'm using the saw when I should be using the chisel. So that means that my house still ain't built yet. I'm trying to build my house, but I'm building it on wood. And I remember they was talking about that guy that he huff and puff and blew the house down. They say he had a wood house, a straw house, and a brick house. He said they had all these different houses. They had all these different houses: a wood house, a straw house, a brick house. But he had all these tools, but you had to find out that the straw house died, the wood house died, and the only house that stayed was the brick house. So this is what you and I have to learn to do here in the Moorish Science Temple of America. We got to crush one under our feet and tame the other to thy purpose. We got to understand that when you begin to talk about the straw house, you cannot build a firm foundation on a straw house. You cannot build a firm foundation off of a wood house, but you can build a firm foundation off a brick house. You know, back years ago when we was coming up, when they used to talk about the brick house, they be talking about our sister who was fine. She was the brick house. But we cannot build nothing that's on an unfirm foundation. So when Noble Drew Ali found the Moorish Science Temple of America in 1913 for the express and profound purpose, he told us to be a brick house. He told us to stand on a firm foundation, one that would never be destroyed. See, and this is where our blessings come through. The Holy Prophet, Noble Drew Ali. This is why he brought us a 7. He says 7 is the number of perfected man. See, 7 is that number of God. 7, the 7 seals. The tools are the workshop of the mind, where things are made of thought and where we build up character. We're taught that. We're taught about that firm foundation here in the Moorish Science Temple of America. We're talking about learn to love instead of hate. We're talking about walking with God. The things that we used to do, we ain't gonna do no more. The places we used to go, we ain't gonna go no more. The friends we used to have, we ain't gonna have no more. There's gonna be a great change since we've been born. So we must be born again. It said being born again, do you mean I must go back through my mother's womb? Is this what you mean by me being born again? And the book said, no, that which is of the flesh is of the flesh, And that which is of the Spirit is of the Spirit. So we must be born again, but we must be born again in our higher self. The higher self, which is the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life that breathes justice, mercy, love, and right. The higher self, our higher self, is what our lower self is not. The higher self breeds justice, mercy, love, and right. And our lower self is what our higher self is not. So this is the purpose of the Moorish Science Temple of America. The purpose of the Moorish Science Temple of America is to teach our people their nationality and their divine creed. Teach our people that they must learn to love instead of hate. Let our people know that when your father and when your mother was born and they was taught that they was Negro, colored, and black, you got to go back to them and give them the lesson now. Say, Mom, you're not Negro. He said, because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders, and you're not a slave. And the only black flag I know is the one that killed roaches. Show me a black flag. My mother went to the store when I was a child, and she got to kill the roaches, the roach spray, and to kill the bugs. We did it that way, but that's flag. That's black flag for that. But this is something that we talking about a flag. Every nation flies a flag. And now, you just heard Morocco got its independence March 2nd, 1956, from under the French rule. So now the Moroccan flag, which is our flag, the same flag that Obama and Hillary and them give them honor to, somebody took that from us. They from France, Europeans, but they done took our flag. So we don't have one now, but the one we have is over there in Morocco, but it's under French rule. Because why? The advent of slavery, doing slavery. This is part of our paperwork when we go talking about reparation. You can't go in California, nowhere else, to talk about reparation if you don't bring up the slave trade. That's why we got to do this thing collectively, because everybody across the country have a part to play in this. This is why Noble Ali bought the paperwork. Brother got the paperwork said recently that when the prophet bought it and he taught it, some people didn't teach it. Some people can't teach it. And right now, some people can't tell you that you're not black. Even your professor at college, he got to go along with the status quo of those that taught you. If not, they won't have a job. Because if you go back and look at the paperwork, you will see where it say Negro, colored, and black. And you'll see that first it was Negro. When I went to school, as I said earlier, when I went to school, we was told that we was Negroes. But as I grew up, a few years later, when Martin Luther King came with the civil rights, we started saying that we was colored. Then we started saying that the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. So now we took on another term, colored, and got a lot of money with it. They're going to give you money with Negro. They're going to give you money with colored. They're going to give you money with black, because these names was given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now, and all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. We're talking about the civil rights now. When we talk about the civil rights issue, we're talking about a non-political issue. See, you got two. You got civil rights and you have human rights. And when you begin to talk about human rights, you're talking about what Noble Ali brought to the Moorish Americans. He brought us human rights because we talking about a human identity. Because when you talking about a human identity, you're talking about nationality. You're talking about divine creed. Don't nobody have to talk about it except you and me, because everybody have one except you and me. There's other issues they could talk about. They don't even talk about that. As I said earlier, they have certain holidays And on them Irish days or their St. Patrick's Day, then they'll say, I'm white. But after that, you can't call me that. On my holidays with my people, you can't call me white that day because I'm Irish or St. Patrick's Day or whatever, because I'm who my forefathers were. That's just like me. Right now, on my special day, you can't call me Moorish. You can call me Negro. You can call me colored. You can call me black. And when I graduate from college, on my paperwork and our graduation, I have to be who my forefathers were. So praise Allah and honor to the Prophet, Noble Drew Ali. I'm always honored to be able to come before my Portland listening audience to talk to you about the last prophet in these days and time, Prophet Noble Drew Ali. I remember, man, it was in the meeting that came up. They said years ago that you couldn't even, had to be in the house by sundown. They had a sundown law. And you had to be in the house. And see, it was all right then, though, because during that time, you were still Negro, colored, and black. That only applied to you. But when our people start dressing like their forefathers, start acting like their forefathers, and start worshiping under their own vine and fig tree, then some things going to change. Because that's what the book say. Because Allah and man are one. But through carnal thoughts and words and deeds, man tore himself away from Allah. Man tore himself away from Allah. He debased himself. He debased himself from Allah. You can't serve two masters at the same time. And how do you debase yourself from Allah? You debase yourself from Allah by living the creed and principles of somebody else. You ain't doing what your fathers used to do. You ain't doing what your mother used to do. You begin to do something else. You acting like somebody else now. You ain't acting like who you are and who your forefathers were. So man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there's no one who is able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father unless his power extend beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. We talking about nationality being the order of the day. When you begin to talk about nationality, you're talking about human identification. I'm always honored and pleasured to be able to come before my Portland listening audience to talk to you about the last prophet in these days, Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation by night and by day through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine.